of Yawar Baig and Associates. He specializes in leadership development and family business consulting. In addition to his Islamic education, he has a bachelor's in history, political science and Urdu, a master's in business, and a PhD level qualification in applied behavioral science, the beard.
Allahu Akbar.
Sheikh Yawar is a resident scholar at the Islamic Society of Western Massachusetts and Hampshire Mosque, where he has changed the community for the better. He is actively encouraging the youth to come closer to God and gain knowledge. He is a light in our community that we are blessed to have him. We thank you for coming today. Please welcome him onto the stage.
That is extremely kind. And I don't think it's completely deserved, but who's complaining? Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah wa ba'd. I saw the title of this, Women of Culture, and I think before my speech I must mention one thing. Remember this year, 857. 857. Subtract that from 2023, which is where we are now, and you have the figure of 1166, 1166. Years ago, the first university on the face of planet Earth was established by a woman of color, Fatima al-Fihriya al-Qurashiyya, in Morocco. It was called the University of Qarawiyyin. And the beauty of it is that it still exists. And it's still about degrees, and it's still obviously the oldest university in the world, established by a Muslim woman in Morocco. What is Ramadan? Ramadan is the 9th month in the lunar Hijri calendar. We follow the lunar calendar, and that's why you will find Ramadan comes on different dates. It's not exactly like the 25th of December. It's not always on the same day, but because it's in this month, fasting Muslims don't eat or drink or do what the birds and bees do during daylight hours, in obedience to the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They also don't lie, cheat, slander, backbite, curse, use profanity, and so on. I mean, they try never to do those things, but in Ramadan they are even more careful. Obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and denying themselves even that which is normally permissible reinforces the spirit of Islam, which is the spirit of submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and reminds us always to obey Him and leave everything that He prohibited in all our lives, in all aspects of our lives. We do this because we know that we do this because we know Allah, and we love Him, and we know Him, and we know that He loves us. At the end of Ramadan, in Eid al-Fitr, which begins with charity and a congregational prayer of thanks and ends with eating great food and meeting friends and family, I must say to you that you must always be kind to Muslims, but particularly in Ramadan, because no food, no drink, and no birds and bees deserves kindness. The best way to find out about Ramadan is to have a Muslim friend and get them to invite you to their mosque and or their home. Ramadan is really a behavior change boot camp to help us to revamp our lives and make them a source of blessing for all those we touch. This can happen if we become muttaqoon, that's the Arabic word, which means God conscious, aware of and conscious of God, of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in every aspect of our lives. And Ramadan is that opportunity. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the glorious and magnificent, in His book, Al-Quran Al-Kareem, He said, كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامُ كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, which means, O you who believe, fasting is prescribed for you as it was prescribed for those before you. And that's the reference to the Jewish people and the Christian people who also have fasting in their religion. So that you may become al-muttaqoon, which is God conscious. Don't worry, you see printing on both sides of the paper. This is recycled paper, so I'm going to read only one side of it. I hate throwing away paper, so I don't want you to get worried, two sides of paper, all these papers. Taqwa, which fasting is meant to give us, is a state where the person loves Allah more than anyone and anything else, and makes every decision in his or her life based on whether it pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or not. And why do we do that? Because what pleases Allah is most beneficial for His creatures. And that is the secret to becoming a source of blessing for all those we touch. People who give, people who are kind and compassionate. But how do you love somebody you don't know? To love Allah, you must know Him. And that is why it is essential to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We recognize Allah, our Creator, through His signs, His creation. And He encouraged us to study the creation and to recognize His hand in it. He said in the Quran, إِنَّ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَاخْتِلَافِ اللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ لَآيَاتٍ لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ الَّذِينَ يَذْكُرُونَ اللَّهَ قِيَامًا وَقُعُودًا وَعَلَى جُنُوبِهِمْ وَيَتَفَكَّرُونَ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ رَبَّنَا مَا خَلَقْتَ هَذَا بَاطِلًا سُبْحَانَكَ فَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. Which means, verily, in the creation of the heavens and the earth, and in the alternation of the night and the day, there are indeed signs for people of understanding. Who are those people? Those who remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala standing, sitting and lying on their sides, and think deeply about the creation of the heavens and the earth, saying, O our Lord, You have not created all this for nothing. You have not created all this in vain. There's a purpose behind this creation. And glory be to You, and unique You are and without partners, and give us salvation from the fire. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us to look for His signs in His creation. Education in Islam, in an Islamic sense, is to first know Allah and then research in His creation, so that we recognize Him through His signs until we love Him and submit to Him with joy. And that is why there is no conflict in Islam between theology and science. Let me show you a glimpse of some of this. I would strongly recommend that you watch two films. One is called One Strange Rock, and the other one is the BBC series you may have seen. If you haven't, you must, called The Blue Planet. It is hypothesized that 4.5 billion years ago, a planet called Theia, about the same size as Mars, was on an intersecting orbit with planet Earth. And they met. And that's called the giant impact hypothesis. There must have been some bang. This did three things. One, it knocked the axis of the Earth, it knocked the Earth off its axis to an exact degree of 23.5 degrees, which gives us our season. If we did not have that tilt of the axis, we would have no seasons. And in this part of the world, in New England, the seasons are the reason we put up with the winter. This impact drove Theia into the earth such that its core and mantle drove deep into the earth and accreted with our core. Geologists believe that is the reason the earth's core is larger than could be expected in a body of our size. That gave us, among other things, iron. Iron is an out-of-the-world substance. Finally, some of the resulting debris ejected and formed the moon, which gives us tides, and which gives us Muslims an opportunity to dispute about when Ramadan starts and ends. And life would be very boring if we didn't have that fight every year. But before I talk about tides, we must talk about water. What is water? Pick up that bottle in front of you, please. Right. That thing in there is 4.5 billion years old. What? That water is 4.5 billion years old. And so it's far older than any mountain range you can imagine. So when we drink this in a few minutes from now, think about what you're drinking. Sam, you just drank what Tyrannosaurus Rex, T-Rex, drank. And that thing was on the earth a couple of billion years before T-Rexes came on the earth. Very same water. Although I don't think Tyrannosaurus Rex drank it out of a plastic bottle. Plastic, which is such an incredible reflection of our life stance as humans. Convenience for us and death for everything else. Water is literally an out-of-the-world substance that came to the earth in meteoroids and perhaps huge storms. Thanks to the distance of the earth from the sun, thanks to our gravity, our atmospheric state, it constantly gets recycled and purified in the evaporation precipitation process, so that we have a constant supply of fresh drinking water. Around 60% of our bodies are made up of water, and we can only live for about 3 to 5 days without water. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran that He created every living thing from water. Water has some very interesting properties that are unlike any other substance. For example, water is a universal solvent, it will dissolve anything. It exists simultaneously in 3 states: solid, liquid, and gas. Unlike any other substance, it expands when it solidifies and becomes less dense. And that's called the anomalous expansion of water. When the temperature of the water falls up to 4 degrees, it becomes dense. I'm talking Celsius. I still haven't got my hand round to the Fahrenheit. And between 4 and 0, it expands. Now, why is that important? Because when it expands, it becomes lighter, and ice floats on water. Ice is also an insulator. So when ice floats on water, the water beneath the ice remains liquid. And that is essential for the survival of marine life. Imagine if a lake became solid all the way to the bottom, everything would die. So if you are planning to dig a pond in your garden, make sure it's more than 3 feet deep. We need that depth for the ice to form on top and still to have some liquid water below, so the marine life in your pond can still exist. The main properties of water are its polarity, cohesion, adhesion, surface tension, high specific heat, and evaporative cooling. The cohesive and adhesive properties are essential for fluid transportation in many forms of life. For example, they allow nutrients to be transported through the xylem vessels to the top of a tree, and for the photosynthesis starch to be transported down to the bottom through the phloem vessels. We all know about evaporative cooling from personal experience of getting out of a pool. And this is the principle behind evaporative coolers in hot, dry countries, which are far more efficient than air conditioning and use a fraction of the electricity. Surface tension enables the floating of ships. On a global scale, the amount of water evaporating is about the same as the amount of water delivered to the earth as precipitation. Without that, the oceans would become empty. Now, let me put this in perspective. Longmeadow, where we are sitting now, has a land area of 9.7 square miles, say 10 square miles. And that is 35,200 acres. 1 inch of rain on 1 acre of land weighs 113 tons. 1 inch of rain. Longmeadow this year had 5.5 inches of rain, and that is 3,977,600 tons. Say 4 million tons. Now think about this. All this water came in the form of individual drops or snowflakes. Instead of that, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had dumped 4 million tons of water onto Longmeadow from an average height of about 10,000 feet, which is the cloud height, at one go, there would be no Longmeadow. It's as simple as that. 4 million tons dropping on us from the sky is kaput. How therefore should we thank Allah, who not only sends us what we need, but sends it in a way that reflects His love and mercy. Raindrops, drop by drop. Think about clipping our nails. Think about haircuts. What if nail tissue and hair tissue had been live? To have a haircut, you would have to go into Bay State under general anesthesia. Seriously. Then let's talk about life on Earth. We used to believe that random carbon molecules join together to form amino acids, which in turn join together to form simple proteins. The sequences in which these amino acids connected to each other, we call them peptide bonds. They decide the shape of the protein. And these eventually, we believe, form the first forms of life. There were two major problems with this hypothesis. One was that when you calculate the time involved, that was far longer than the time the Earth has existed. So it couldn't have happened because the Earth hasn't been there long enough. And the second was, given all this happens, it still is a dead chemical unless it has a spark called life. So where does that come from? Very interestingly, there's a very recent research as of 2019. The Japanese Space Agency's satellite Hayabusa 2, their spacecraft, which went to the asteroid Ryugu and took soil samples from Ryugu. Now, in those soil samples, they found uracil, which is one of the chemical building blocks for RNA, and niacin, which is called vitamin B3 or nicotinic acid, which is vital for their metabolism. So the scientists have said that this is where life originated from the asteroids, which again came from deep space. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decided to create the earth and its inhabitants, He planned and created conditions for it and seeded it with what was needed and created the spark to animate it. Islam teaches us to see that hand and not be confused with the creation, no matter how beautiful and complex it might be. Among His creatures, and this is the last of them, of which there is an infinite number and an unending variety, is one called the octopus. A soft-bodied creature, mollusk, that's on everyone's menu. How many of you have eaten calamari? Next time you eat that, remember you're eating one of the most intelligent creatures in the world. I don't know why. Calamari is chopped up octopus arms. Not nice. Eat a fish instead. Has no defense mechanism except magic. Camouflage. 1 minute it's there, and next minute you're seeing a piece of coral. You're seeing a rock. You're seeing a strand of kelp waving in the waves. Confuses the predator. The predator leaves, and the piece of rock, the kelp or the coral, turns back into the octopus and goes away using jet propulsion. Exactly the same process that jet engines use with air, octopi use with water. The camouflage is totally perfect in color and texture. Now, if I asked you this question, if you were creating a creature which had to camouflage completely perfectly texture and color. What are the two senses which you would say would be absolutely critical, without which it cannot be done? What do you need to be able to match color perfectly? What is it? Anybody?
Sight.
What kind of sight? Sight, yes. What kind of sight? Full color vision. Yes or no? Because you're matching color. How can I match color if I can't see color? Full color vision, yes? Alright. For texture, what do you need? What is the sense you need?
Touch.
Touch, right? I need to feel this. I say, okay, this. Now hold your breath. Octopi are colorblind. They see only black and white. And they match texture perfectly by sight. They don't touch. Why? Now, theory of natural selection tells us that in the struggle for survival, only those creatures which can survive. The others which are not fit enough die. And over time, they develop their survival tactics more and more until they perfect them. Now, by that theory, an octopus, the original primordial grandfather octopus, who was colorblind and who was trying to match texture by touch, by sight, should have become somebody's calamari long ago. Right? Because he's unfit. Not only do they do that, but in the billions of years that they have survived, they have never become able to see color. And they have never matched texture by touch. So who guides them for color? Somebody who can't see color. And guides so perfectly. I strongly advise, go onto YouTube. There are some absolutely phenomenal videos. You'll blow your mind to see the camouflage of the octopus. It is magic. I mean, I have no other word to say. It is totally magic. This is Allah. This is our Creator. And through love, through Ramadan, we learn to appreciate, we learn to reflect, we learn to love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we learn that what He decided for us is the best that we can know, because He knows better than us, and we don't think we know better than He does, and we love Him and we know He loves us, and so we obey Him with joy. Thank you very much for your invitation. I'm delighted to be here, and I wish all of you Ramadan Kareem. Thank you very much.